Hello and welcome back to Talking Europe. In this part of our programme, Poland's first ever Minister for Climate. Now, Warsaw is the only EU capital that at this point has not formally signed up to the EU's target of achieving climate neutrality by the year 2050. That means having a net of zero greenhouse gas emissions by that date. Michał Kurtyka is an economist who chaired the COP24 climate summit in Katowice in 2018 and has put forward many climate policies during his time in office, including one on electric vehicles. Now, he's also currently one of 10 candidates for the role of the next Secretary General for the OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. Michał Kurtyka, thank you so much for being on the programme.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
I'd like to start with that EU climate neutrality goal that I mentioned. As I said, Poland an outlier among the 27 member states at this point. However, in a tweet that you put out on November 20th, you said, "We must consolidate our efforts and put climate-friendly policies at the heart of the recovery process." Can we take this as an indication that Poland is ready to soon formally sign up to the 2050 climate neutrality goal?
Well, we are part of European Union, and as European Union, we decided in December last year, the European Council, that we will pursue this goal of achieving climate neutrality for the whole European Union by 2050. So that's a common target, and we are putting our biggest effort in terms of achieving this climate in a very particular situation of a country which has a starting point which is very different from other member states. And this also has been recognized by other 27, because at that time in December 2019, when this European Council concluded its final statement, Great Britain was part of EU. So we said, yes, as European Union, we go for climate neutrality and we do our utmost in order to reach it, even if 27 recognized a very particular starting point for Poland. It's different whether you have 75% of your electricity, which is zero emission, which is the case of France, and 75% of your electricity being generated by coal, which is the case of Poland. And when we are saying that we should reach the same goal the same year, we also need to recognize that we have a different starting point. And also in this ultimately extremely capital-intensive revolution, we need to take into account possibilities that each of us, each of the member states has. And I think it's the essence of European solidarity and the fact that we really want all of us to implement Paris Agreement as soon as only possible. And for Poland, it is at the heart of our discussion right now. We were chairing and I was presiding over COP24 in Katowice, and since then, a lot is changing in Polish energy policy and in awareness among our citizens regarding climate objectives.
I'd like to refer to some research, though, that was carried out very recently by the esteemed Worldwide Fund for Nature. It had input from more than 100 experts. Now, this report concluded that it is possible for Poland, on an individual country basis, not only to achieve this net zero goal, but also to have positive results for your country as well, such as in the electric vehicles sector, creating 81,000 jobs, more jobs in other sectors as well. Have you taken these findings on board? Could that change your opinion about your individual country's goal?
Well, I am the one, and thank you very much for noticing, who introduced in Poland these electric vehicles as a strategy, as environmental, climate-friendly, but also economic and industrial strategy. And I have presented in September an ambitious energy policy for Poland till 2040. We want to build a new zero-emission system, energy system, which will be of the size comparable to the magnitude of the existing conventional one, which was created during the last 60 or 70 years. So you see how challenging it is to create a new system, in fact, in 20 years and replace or being able to complement the existing conventional one.
I think that if I could just cut in,
speaking about zero emission.
Well, I just wanted to cut in because I think it has been acknowledged at the European summits that Poland does have a very different starting point, as you said. But would your government perhaps be looking for more money from the European Union's Just Transition Fund to help achieving this goal?
Well, indeed, we have a challenge in this regard. Poland is not as endowed in capital as, let's say, Netherlands or Germany or France. And also average income still is half of the Western European counterparts, or let's say a photovoltaic panel or a windmill or an electric car costs the same on the single market. Nevertheless, we are really progressing extremely fast right now. And this is what I'm saying, that we have the momentum here in Poland. Since the beginning of the year, 100,000 households equipped their roofs with photovoltaic panels. That's only one example of how fast right now it is changing in Poland. And the International Energy Agency foresees that by 2024 we will add 65% more of renewable capacity in Poland to already 10,000 installed megawatts, which I celebrated in June this year. So this revolution is really taking momentum because technologies are here and because we are blessed with support from state. And indeed, as you say, for this capital-intensive revolution, it is vital to get funding, which goes especially to coal-dependent regions. And Just Transition Fund plays a crucial role in enabling the ambition at the European level.
Now, well, speaking of money, this brings us on to a very pressing issue at the moment. Poland very much involved in regarding the EU budget. The EU budget currently somewhat on hold after the Polish government and the Hungarian government conjointly vetoed it. Just to remind our viewers, as we've discussed on the programme, this is an objection to a new proposed rule making the transfer of some EU funds to any member state conditional on that member state meeting rule of law commitments. Now, Mr. Kurtyka, the Polish Senate has just called on your government to end its veto. Is it time for a change of position?
Well, of course, budget and European budget, unprecedented in this time of COVID, is an enormous political challenge, and the decision which will be waiting on the way European Union will be functioning in the 10 years to come. So it has been a very complicated discussion. I would recall to you that in July, the Just Transition Fund we just mentioned, which is an enabler for Polish ambition, has been cut by half by so-called frugal states. So it's a complicated discussion with lots of ups and downs and jumps. And for me, it is extremely important that we are able to dedicate funding for this energy and climate transition in Poland. And this is why the European New Perspective as well as Recovery Fund play an extremely important role in the field of Minister of Climate here in Poland.
There have been some specific rule of law issues raised, for example, just in the last few days by members of the European Parliament. For example, the supposed so-called LGBTI-free zones in municipalities in Poland that cover about a third of your country at this point. And it's not just European lawmakers who are objecting. 72% of Polish people who were polled have said that they are in favour of this conditionality. And just a reminder, it would be applicable to any member state, including France and the Netherlands. You could say that the government's stance currently really is contrary to the will of the people.
I think that Poles are extremely pro-European, and this is something that is frequently forgotten when we are looking from a perspective of countries where the support for European Union is not that high as it is in Poland. So I think we all want to strive a compromise around this budget. This is a money which is extremely necessary right now for the recovery process. And we know how difficult, how challenging it is for heads of states to get a compromise and, in fact, to get consensus around such a vital issue. But I do hope that we can reach such a consensus and that we can move forward.
Well, you very rightly say that the European Union, like many countries, are undergoing a crisis at the moment financially due to COVID, which just leads me to ask you, I'd really like to clarify, it seems to be a contradiction because 1.8 trillion euros of funding over the next 7 years is held up right now by your government and Hungary. Is there a compromise that would be acceptable to your government that would let this money be disbursed to all 27 member states, including Poland?
This is the decision of heads of states, and European Council is regrouping heads of states. In Poland, it's the Prime Minister who represents the country, and this is his, and he's discussing it with his peers. And I do hope that we can reach a compromise in this regard.
And just one final question. I mentioned that you are one of 10 candidates to become the next leader of the OECD. Can you give us in just a couple of lines your pitch for why it should be you?
As COP24 president, as the one who orchestrated a consensus among 196 countries over the implementation of the Paris Agreement in Katowice 2 years ago, we struck a compromise. And I'm confident that we are able also to strike a compromise and to build consensus among 37 OECD member states for a new growth, not only within our societies. We see how many inequalities how much inequalities have been increased in the last years within our countries, but also how much challenging it is still to help developing countries, non-OECD member states, in terms of new ideas, new technologies, new solutions, new standards. This is what OECD stands for.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Michał Kurtyka, Minister of Climate and Environment for Poland. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to you as well for watching the programme. Do stay tuned to France 24.